Welcome to Creatively Speaking. I am your host, LeAnna Weller Smith of Weller Smith Design, and you are listening to Season 2 Recipe for Success, Episode 3, The Art of Cookbook Publishing, Exploring Traditional and Self-Publishing in the World of Illustrated Culinary Books. I am beyond thrilled to introduce our guest, Ann Treistman. Ann is the editorial director of Countryman Press. As you will learn in this episode, Ann and I have worked together for many, many years. So it was a pleasure to have this conversation with her to talk all things publishing, cookbooks, and more. With a background in the arts and a passion for cooking, Ann has expertly navigated her way through the world of publishing, all the way from fiction to the vibrant world of cookbooks. She's here to share her unique insights into the intricate process of cookbook publishing, the challenges and rewards of traditional versus self-publishing, and the art of creating beautiful, illustrated books. Whether you're an aspiring cookbook author or just love a beautifully crafted book, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. Hey, Ann, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and what you do.
Sure. I'm happy to be here too. I know we've worked together for decades, literally. I am the editorial director of Countryman Press, and Countryman is an imprint of WW Norton, an employee-owned independent publishing house celebrating its 100th anniversary this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and at Countryman, we do a lot of illustrated books, a lot of books that sort of help people lead better lives, is how we think of it. Prescriptive is another word you can use, a little less lyrical, I think. But we publish a lot of books that teach how to do things, that are cookbooks, that are gift books, anything that has sort of art or drawings. We love and we embrace. And we also pride ourselves a lot on our production values. So we work really closely with our production team and have a terrific art director. And yeah, it's a really fun place to be. And I think the books are really fun to publish.
That's exciting. Yeah, we've been working together for so long.
I know.
Oh my God. When I think back about how long we've worked together, I kind of get sad because I missed that time when I don't know, I feel like we kind of grew up in the industry a little bit. But going back to that, how did you get started in publishing? Like, what is your background? Like, what led you to where you're at today?
Well, I mean, it's probably the classic story. First I wanted to be a writer, and then that wasn't really working out. So I decided to work in publishing. So when I first started working in publishing, I actually did some fiction and some nonfiction books. And then I had the opportunity to work at Artisan, which is where you and I work together, doing cookbooks and illustrated books. And it actually sort of tapped back. When I was in college, I was pretty artsy, frankly. I did a lot of painting, and I did, what is it called? Screen
printing.
Yeah, screen printing. And just, it really made me remember those days and the pleasures of making something really beautiful. I think you probably agree with me that working in publishing is a pleasure because we're actually producing something, which is so uncommon, I feel like, these days. But being able to sort of hold that book at the end of the day and see how beautiful it is, and, being part of choosing what the paper is and the format and all of that kind of drifted me into the cookbook and illustrated book. So then I was at Artisan, and I actually worked at a ton of places because, to move up in publishing, you have to kind of move out. So I worked at a number of houses and wound up here at Countryman, where I've been for 10 years. And it's been really fun, sort of staffing our group. And we have our own publicist, we have our own marketing person. Yeah. So does that answer? I don't know. I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, I love that. And I love that you have this creative background, because you're right. When it comes to these illustrated books, it is about the attention to that creative detail that really counts when it comes to producing a high quality book, and something that is, beautiful on top of that, it just having that eye. And I've worked with you for so long, and I have experienced that with you in that I know that you're very high touch when it comes to creating these books. And it's always nice to have an editor that does get involved, that has a vision for things, because that collaborative process has always been very, very exciting for me as coming from it as a designer. But tell me a little bit more about Countryman's books, like the types of books that they like to publish, the types of authors or content that they are generally known for.
Sure. I mean, I think I'm probably like most editors in publishing right now about the platform. You know, a lot of it is about the platform. People who are on TikTok, people are on YouTube, particularly in the cooking space. We have a couple kind of heavy hitters there. We have Sam the Cooking Guy, who has his own YouTube show, and we're publishing his third book next spring, which is a grilling book. So I'm excited about that one. We just published Nagi Mahashi, who does Recipe Tin Eats. We published her book. And that seems to be off to a really great start. She has a huge following. Do you ever cook her stuff? I mean, if you type in a recipe, more often than not one of Nagi's recipes will come up. She's sort of known for testing and retesting and just making sure everything works. Mm-hmm. And they're sort of comfort food recipes that are really good. And you know, cooking is definitely something that I've always loved to do, and I love food. So that feels very natural and comfortable for me. We also have a couple people on staff who are vegetarians. So we publish a lot of vegan cookbooks. You know, another fun thing about publishing is that your own interests can really inform what you're publishing. So we're doing that. We just did a really cool cookbook with Matthew Rayford called Breast and Yam. And that was, Matthew has a farm in Georgia. So it was about Gullah Geechee cooking, because that is his heritage. And that was a good one. You know, beautiful photos are always important, great recipes, and you either have to have a really good story that marketing and publicity can spin and get people to think about it, or a really good platform. I mean, another one we just did was Snackable Bakes with Jessie Sheehan, and she's a TikToker. So her TikToks they're really fun and busy and somewhat frenetic, but that is the nature of TikTok. And in real life, Jessie just works so hard and, you know, tests and retests, and her recipes are some of the most creative and delicious and easy that we have out there. We've also had really nice luck with publicity and marketing. I mean, Jessie and a number of our other authors, you know, Toya Bodie, we just published a book by Gazina Bullock Prado, who is out of Vermont, and her book is My Vermont Table. But all of those guys had CBS The Dish, which turns out to be a very high selling outlet.
Well, that's interesting. So you mentioned like TikTok, and I feel like that's a big thing now. And
it is.
So how are books now coming across your desk? I mean, I know they're probably still coming across as proposals and this and that, but how much has the landscape changed in almost like vetting these authors through these different platforms now, as opposed to just receiving, you know, a proposal or from an agent or from a author?
Well, I mean, these days we do depend pretty much on agents. Like, we can reach out to somebody, but quite often they're already agented or they're soon to be agented. It's very rare these days to get a proposal or a call even from somebody who wants to do a book. Maybe because your business is, you know, growing, and to self-publish a book, you can earn more money, certainly. And it's easier because you don't have to sort of get approved by anyone. So we definitely see more through agents. And I think it's the higher profile books too. And that's kind of where we are in having to do that. I don't know if you found, even in self-publishing, but the manufacturing costs have gotten really prohibitive. So like the old days where we would buy a book with a, $5,000 advance and print 10,000 copies and sell it for $9.99 each. Like those days are over.
Yeah, those are gone. And in self-publishing, the clients that we're working with, they are self-funding the entire product, just, as you mentioned. And it is interesting though, because a lot of them that come to us, they've already done their research in terms of do I want to be published traditionally or not? And some of them though still have that wish. They really do want to, but they do know the realities in that they are probably going to make more money by self-publishing because of all the other things that come into, the traditional publisher that has to kind of filter in through, all of your overhead expenses. And, you offer something that is really still partially elusive to the self-published author, which is, this wide distribution. There are some options that are out there now that, a lot of them really want that, that status of being traditionally published. It still makes a difference to them. But I'm curious, like, so, how many proposals come across your desk in like a week or a month? Like, how many books are you reviewing with the team?
Well, I guess it could be, I don't know, I probably get 2 or 3 a week. But then, I have 2 editors working for me, and they each probably get 3 or 4 a week. Right now, we're publishing fewer books than we used to. We're sort of trying to do fewer books, but bigger books, because of the manufacturing costs and just like it's a crowded market, as I'm sure you found, like sometimes something will come in and we'll be like, oh my God, I don't think this has ever been done before. And then you do a little bit of research and you're like, oh yeah, I guess it was done and it didn't succeed. So, that can be a tough thing to have happen, but it does happen a lot. So we're publishing between like 35 and 40 books a year. And there's 3 seasons. So I think it's a good amount. I actually did love the days where we would just like jam out. Like at one point we were doing 60 books a year.
Wow.
Which was pretty fun.
Wow.
Because I like to work really fast, as you know.
Yeah,
like and we did a lot of very, what's the word? It's not gimmicky. It's, like something that's in the zeitgeist. Because when I started, the internet just wasn't what it is now. So like we did these best green drinks books. We did these dump cake dessert books. And we could just get them out quickly. And they're almost like what somebody would now Google. Like you'd have this little paperback. And so, the biggest challenge for us is often trying to make sure that we're publishing something for which somebody really wants a book. Like they want to pay the money to have the paper, to have the words printed. And so that's the audience. And I definitely think, obviously I work in traditional publishing, so I think it's the best as well, but it's nice for people to have options. But when you're published into a place, especially a place like Norton, you really have prestige and cachet, and you have your own publicist and your marketing person, and when they go out with a book, it has the Countryman imprint on the spine. So I do think that counts for a lot.
Oh, I do. Absolutely. I agree. So you have the 3 seasons that you're publishing. You have your 3 times a year. What is there a more ideal time to release a cookbook? Is there a better time than?
Traditionally it's fall because you have all the holiday sales. But because traditionally it's fall, it's a very crowded season. And we've had some luck. I love to bake and I love baking cookbooks. And we've had some really nice luck publishing baking cookbooks in the spring because it's sort of like Mother's Day and it's wider open for marketing and sales. So those are sort of the 2 places. January is traditional. I mentioned that we did some vegan books and some kind of healthy eating books. And January is a traditional time for that because it's New Year, New You. But for big, fancy cookbooks. I mean, we have the King Arthur Baking School cookbook that we published in the fall. That's really the time because people don't want to spend $35 or $40 on a whim, but they will definitely spend it as a gift for a friend or a loved one. So.
Oh, absolutely. I know with our self-publishing clients, a lot of them want to, they always say, well, when should I publish this? Should I publish it at the same time? And, we're very fortunate in that the clients that we do work with, they have a nice audience, a nice size, and they are primed and ready to buy from them. So what's nice about that side of it is that, I tell them that, they don't necessarily have to try to force themselves into that crowded time of fall. They actually can, they can release, not in the summer, obviously, but like there's definitely better times that they can take the time. They're not in that crowded market. They can get visibility. They're not going to be competing with the big cookbook that everyone wants. But yet their audience will purchase theirs. So that always comes up as to when's the best time.
Yeah.
And, it really depends on what their goals are.
But it also, that it can be a time like we just did a cookbook by Toya Bodie, and it was called Cooking for the Culture. And she's from New Orleans. So we purposefully put that in February. So it would be available for Mardi Gras. And it got a lot of pickup because of that. So there's also, tie-ins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thinking about what's hitting at different times and making sure that you're in the bookstores for that time period, which is great. So what is the process? Like, what's your day-to-day like at the office? Like, I know that you have your hands probably in the whole process, but maybe just walk through what a day looks like from, the beginning of your day to the end of it. What's a typical day that you have?
I mean, every day is different, but I guess going through emails, answering questions, looking at proposals that come in, talking to my colleagues about proposals they might want to bring up. I might have in my inbox a couple, cover mechanicals to look at. And that will also entail conversations with people because maybe there's a photo on there that I feel like isn't the right one, or, a quote, a blurb will have come in that the designer didn't know about. So I'll have to add that to it. And then, it's so cyclical because during the 3 seasons, like you have all these, like our job is to sell our books to the sales staff, and then the sales staff has to sell them to their accounts, and then the accounts have to sell them to readers. So we're constantly creating copy and thinking about how to position things, but with all those different steps in mind. So it's almost like it takes 4 times as long, because first we'll have a positioning meeting where we meet with sales and talk about where we think the book fits into the market. So that will be copy we've written for that. And then we'll have our sales conference. We'll have different copy for that. And then we'll have, what we're putting online or what we're putting on the flat. So there's a lot of writing of copy and sort of figuring out how a book will fit into the marketplace. There's also, just keeping track of what's selling in the country and what books may be out there that we need and we don't have. There's meetings, every week I have an art meeting. I have an editorial board meeting. All those different aspects, talking to production. I don't know. It's
yeah, you have a lot. There's
it's a busy day.
And that's why I asked, because I feel like I don't think people fully understand even just what your role has to cover from beginning to end, which I think is so, it's amazing because you really do shepherd these through from, and like you are very high touch with these. I know working with you that, you are paying attention to those cover shots. You're paying attention to what you think it's going to, how it's going to match up against something else that's coming out around the same time. And you have a great eye for that.
And I didn't even mention actually editing, because a lot of times the actual editing process doesn't take place when I'm sitting at my desk, just because there's so much else coming in. But, I love to edit the books. I think that's really such a pleasurable time to work closely with the author. And I'm always I think that my editing process is I think it's nice to work with authors because I rarely will sort of say, this is the way it has to be. I mean, I like to have a lot of back and forth. I'm fine being wrong or being disagreed with. And I think the end result is better for it.
Yeah,
Or I hope so.
yeah. I mean, you've always been open to a very collaborative process. That's what I've always enjoyed working with you. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that the editors as well like having someone who's willing to kind of, really form the end products. And you're so expert at what you do that it's always a pleasure just to see how you go through the process. I get that
Maybe.
opportunity. I get that opportunity because when we do work together, it's always fun to see like the end product. And it's like, I feel like you're a genius.
Oh,
It's
come
like,
on.
I know I do.
Thanks, Ann. That's
I
very
love working
sweet.
with you.
Yeah, I think that's
But
true.
so how much, so, look, every culinary creator, they have, like most of them anyway, they dream of this cookbook, they dream of
Mhm.
having a cookbook, and once they finally do, get a traditional deal, like how much do you really let them in on that process when it comes to cover
Oh, a
and
lot.
yeah.
I mean, I think we're actually unique in that, and I hope my production people aren't listening, but like, so sort of the process, and maybe this is what you were asking me when you were asking me what my day is like. So, we have the manuscript, we edit the manuscript, it goes to copy editing, comes back from copy editing. While it's at copy editing, the designers are working on sample spreads, and the cover comes back from that. It gets laid out into pages. The pages go through usually 3 or 4 passes. And along the way, I've worked really closely with the author, or my art director has worked closely with the photographer to get the right look for the book. So that's like, there's a lot of things that happen simultaneously. But when the passes come, I tend to send my authors sort of every pass, because in this digital age, it's just an email.
Yeah.
And, people can look at it pretty quickly. And God forbid there's a mistake that one of us missed that they could catch, just from seeing the email. So I'm very welcoming of an author, as long as long as they're respectful of us. There are people sometimes that really go overboard. They'll get it back and they'll be like, "Oh my God, I don't like the way that sentence sounds," and they'll change a sentence where the first sentence was perfectly fine. So that sort of thing is kind of difficult, but definitely in terms of fixing errors, or like if there's a photo you want to switch, that's something that I think an author should absolutely do. Because you know how weird it is when you go from a manuscript to a first pass, it's dramatic.
Yes, it is.
And sometimes you can't, and I myself, even after all these years, like, can't always picture what it's going to look like an opening spread. You have to decide, well, am I going to put the table of contents? Am I going to have the entire table of contents? Am I going to just have the chapters? And then on the chapter openers, am I going to list the recipes? Am I going to have, opening text? Am I going to have a photo? Like, all those things have to be figured out. And I just don't want it to be set in stone, because when I see it, I might be like, that's not working for me. Like, a full table of contents might be 6 pages, and you're like,
Right.
we don't want that, too much. So yeah, the first pass is somewhat, and again, I hope Devin's not listening, but a working document to some degree.
I feel the same. Like, I know when we put out our first pass, we're going through the sample pages, just like you said. We have sample pages, they know the overall look and feel. But once you have that full first
Yeah.
pass laid out, and sometimes you still have to fill in spots, right? You're like, okay, well, these lifestyle images are coming later,
Mhm.
and this is coming, this is the placeholder. But it does give you that first glance at how it's going to flow. So I do feel like that first pass is always something that it's still malleable, I think,
Yeah.
at that
I
point.
definitely miss, I think you and I have done this before, but the days where you would print it out and you would like spread it on a conference table, and then you'd be like,
Move it
oh,
all
there's too
around.
many photos in a row.
Yeah.
So you'd switch. Yeah, I love doing that, like sort of the puzzle of it.
Yeah, I still do it. I mean, especially when authors come to us with so many photos, because that's what's
Hmm.
happening now. And I'm sure
Hmm.
you might see this trend. I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah, that now now they have either they're taking their own photos and they have the ability to provide so many outtakes. Like before, remember, it was like we had 35 photos and it cost $15,000 and you're like picking plates and cups and bowls and you were there on the shoot with that, and it was just, it's so different now, because I do feel like, these books can be, I don't know, just more full. They have so much more content in them now and they cost a lot more too.
No, I just actually got a folder of 800 images for a book.
Yeah.
Production was like, you're going to need to narrow that down.
Yeah. Yep. You just print out those thumbnails and start Xing them out and saying, no. I remember doing that so many times, and we still do it for some cookbooks. But what I'm curious too about is that, like, how long does this process take for a traditional publisher, from, I'd say, signed contract to printed in hand books?
Oh, like 2 years.
Yeah.
About, because usually somebody wants a full year to write it. And again, I keep going back to the manufacturing, but a full year to print it and have it in your warehouse, and it needs to be in your warehouse 6 weeks before it's on sale. And if you're printing overseas, sometimes that's 3 months on the water. Yep. So it's a very long process. It doesn't have to be. I mean, and we keep saying, like, in the olden days, whoever's listening probably thinks we're 100 years old, but we're close to that. But I used to love just pounding out books really fast. Like, an author could write a book in, 3 weeks, and then we could edit it and have it laid out in another month. And then it would go, to a local domestic printer and we could have it back quickly. So, like, I think I did Best Green Drinks in might have been like 4 months. Wow. Actually, Jessie Sheehan's Snackable Bakes, she did really fast. I should look up when she delivered it, but I think that might have been like a year from start to finish. That was a super quick one because she wanted it out for Mother's Day.
So are most of these books then being written then? They're not actually, so they are being.
Oh no, it's just a proposal.
Yeah, it's just a proposal.
We very rarely get a finished book.
A finished book. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
because I think people don't want to write it unless they know
it's going to sell. Well,
because they kind of have to take time off.
Yeah, and it is pretty wild that you actually have to foresee what is going to be ready, like the market's going to be ready for it in 2 years, not at that moment. So that's a big testament to your vision that you have, because a lot of people can't really see that far into the future. You're like, let me look into my crystal ball.
Yeah, I mean, there are tools for that though, right? Like, we have there's something called Edelweiss, and that lists, every publisher lists their books in that. So, I can sort of see what's upcoming and what other people are doing. And we're all sort of on the same page, right? So if I'm gambling on something, but so is somebody else in a different house. So it's funny how trends are. I mean, you've probably found this too. Like, they kind of last longer than you think they're going to. Like, you think it's just going to be, a flash in the pan. What's the one? Keto diet. Yeah. Like, I keep not doing a keto diet book, and then there's another bestseller. And you're like, when is this trend going to end?
They just have a different take on it. Because so now it's like, we did a keto book, and that was one of the first big books that we self-published, and she had a traditional self-published deal. She saw the numbers. She knew how much she put into marketing and promotion on her own, and she realized, let me just do this on my own. And it's doing really well. But it's like the carbohydrate lovers version of keto. Like, okay, yeah, sign me up. Sign me up if I can't have carbs. And
what the heck is that?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great book. I will share that with you. But it's pretty interesting now that they're finding little, like, the vegan version of keto, or no bacon keto. It's like they're finding little niches to keep it alive. It has definitely not gone anywhere. But that brings me to this other thought about marketing and publicity. Like, I know when we were working together, and obviously we were at Artisan, which I feel like they had these massive budgets at that time. But it seemed like, we did a lot. We did a lot of help with the clients to market them. We had publicity that worked really hard. Now I think it's a little bit different. So what is it how do you work with your authors on that side? Like, how much do they need to go get their own publicity agent? Are you, like, now that things are kind of opening up, I think I've seen you guys have, signings now. Like, what does that look like now?
It's definitely getting more back to normal. It's I don't know if people attend as much as they used to. I think people have gotten very comfortable being on their couch. So that's been challenging because you don't want to set up an event for an author and have like 4 people show up,
Right.
because that's a terrible feeling. But we definitely are, sending books out. We're definitely setting up, as I mentioned, Rena had this number of CBS shows, print media, but a lot of online promotions. And then there's a lot of marketing, but we do depend on the author a lot, especially if they have a huge platform.
Yeah. And that's super helpful if they do.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are anticipating these clients or these authors,
Mm-hmm.
what are your parameters? What makes a proposal enticing to you when you are going through them?
Well, I mean, I still really want it to be a good topic,
Yeah.
and if it's a cookbook, I want the food to sound and look delicious and be something people can make. In terms of the platform front, um, I don't know, TikTok seems like you have to have at least 1 million viewers to really get on anybody's radar. Instagram, probably at least 100,000, and Facebook as well. You know what one funny thing is, but I don't know if this will relate to cookbooks, but I did a book a few years ago, called Olive, Mabel, and Me. And it was about, did you ever watch the dogs? It was on Twitter, and he was a sportscaster, and he had his dogs like racing,
Oh
and
my, yes.
and it was so funny and great. And we published that, and that was a total pleasure to publish. I have it on my bookshelf. It's Andrew Cotter. And Twitter, I think the people on Twitter are book buyers. So I do
Oh,
when
that's
I see,
interesting. That's
like,
interesting.
because they read, right? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes with TikTok or Instagram, especially, like we'll get proposals in from somebody who has an Instagram account with, 300 or 500,000 followers. And I'll be like, but it's all pictures. Like all anybody wants to do is take their phone and swipe through those pictures. So it has to, in addition to a platform, you have to have something that will, translate onto paper, and that people will want to spend their money to have that book and paper in their hands and on their shelves. Does that answer your question? I don't even remember what you
Yeah, no,
asked now.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's really interesting too about TikTok, or not TikTok, about Twitter, because usually people are like, oh no, Twitter is kind of past its prime in a way, because a lot of people have jumped over to TikTok
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah, and that was actually 2 years ago, so maybe I'm wrong.
yeah. But that's interesting. But so have you seen, just like you talked about earlier, these trends in cookbooks? Have you seen anything recently that you think is going to kind of span the next few years and stick
I
around?
think I think stories. I think telling stories in your cookbook has become a very common thing and something people are interested in, and especially if the author has an experience that's unusual or different or something that hasn't been explored before. That that is fascinating, I think.
Yeah, and I noticed that even just looking at your last few lists that you've had, and it's that trend seems to be holding strong, which is
Mhm.
there is a a real purpose, just like you said, behind that that book, the story that's coming out of it. It's not just here's all these recipes and go make them. It really is taking you through their experience or what they what they stand for, different things like that. So that's exciting. So do you have a cookbook that you're excited about? I know you mentioned a bunch in the beginning that are new and they're coming out soon, but do you have anything that is that you want to mention that's exciting? That's something other than those?
So many. No, I mean, the King Arthur Baking School cookbook has been a really fun one to work on. I spent a lot of time up in Vermont trying to kind of convince them that they needed a cookbook for their baking school. And it's a really exquisite book. The photography, the step-by-step, you really learn a lot. So that's definitely one of my favorites. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum, Nagi's book, The Recipe Tin Eats, is very simple, straightforward recipes for dinner. The book's called Dinner. And as a working mom, that every night dinner needs to be made. And often that falls to us. But even actually, my son has been using Nagi's cookbook because it's so accessible and it's beautiful. Like it's a big book and the photos are all full color. So those are really two that I'm excited about. And Toya's too, that I mentioned, Cooking for the Culture, because she's just amazing. Like she just, food was her lifeline, and what she's made with her life is just incredible. So.
And for these books, like about how long are they? Like about how many recipes are these cookbooks hitting at this time?
So usually they range from, 75 or 80 to 100, 125. We don't usually like to go over 125 just because it's a lot of paper.
Yeah.
I think I don't know how many recipes Nagi has, but her cookbook is very long. The King Arthur cookbook, I think, has about 100. I think Toya has, I think, roughly 100. And the page count usually is roughly between like 240, and it can go up to 320, but I think 256 is sort of a sweet spot. And then you have the 16-page signatures on either end. Do the self-published books, those have to be in signatures of 16 too,
yeah,
right?
They're the same, all the same specs. Would we go with 256 pages, or the same thing? If they want to go up, it has to go in signatures of 16. So yeah, we're running on the same sort of constraints.
Right. Yeah, and everything is paper over board now, which kind of bums me out. Because I just like no more jackets. I just like a little bit of diversity.
Yeah. But at least there's some creative things that you can do. Like the printers are really open to, obviously it costs money, but then they are open to, different textures and trying different.
Yeah. I didn't mention we have this Necro Nom Nom series, which they're cookbooks based on H.P. Lovecraft. So they're really wacky recipes, but the cover on that is really beautiful. Like it's embossed and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, they can do so many things. So do you have anything on your wish list? Books that you would like to see come across your desk, or something that you want to acquire? Do you have anything that you've been dreaming of producing?
Cookbook related or anything?
Yeah, anything at this
point. I mean, one book I take these sort of CrossFit classes, and I've always wanted a women's kind of weightlifting book, but not just how to, but also like the meditative aspect of it. Sort of, what is it? Motorcycles, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance kind of thing, which I've always been fascinated by. And also we're doing nicely with sort of little funny books. So a little bit of humor is nice. And I mean, we're really open to looking at anything.
So what advice do you have for someone who's an aspiring cookbook author who wants a traditional publishing contract? Any advice? I'm sure they would love it.
They should send brownies. lots of brownies to cross my desk. Seriously, when people do send food for me to bring into my ed board meetings, it is very useful. People are a lot more receptive when they have a chocolate chip cookie in their hand. But no, I guess try and think of a really creative, go out and see what else is out there, see how your cookbook fits in with those cookbooks. You can do the old thing of looking at the acknowledgments in the back of a cookbook and sort of see who the agent might be. There's a couple of big agents who focus on cookbooks, which you could absolutely find by Googling. And yeah, I would, try and find an agent if you can, or call LeAnna if you can't. I don't know, advice. I guess just be true to what you want to write, and you'll probably find somebody with whom you connect. And practically build your social media. Like that's a big thing.
So where can people find your submission guidelines and if they want to submit a proposal without an agent?
Sure. If you go to our website, you can go to any of our social media, and the information will be there, and you can reach out to us.
Well, and I actually have, I probably need a part two because I have like a million other questions I want to ask you, but I know that you are super busy. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking this time to chat with me. Anything else? Where else can they can get you on Instagram at, is it just
Facebook? Yeah. It's just Countryman Press.
Countryman Press.
And our website too. So yeah. And you can buy Countryman books wherever books are sold.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ann.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, LeAnna. So we'll be in touch.